Welcome back to War Stories and Fairy Tales. I'm Scott, I'm your layman, and this is our history of war. And this is a background episode. Today we're asking the question, why should we study war? Well, we're going to start off with listening to a couple other people's words. John Adams, the second president of the United States, said, "I must study politics and war, that my children may study mathematics and philosophy, that their children may have liberty to study painting, poetry, and music." Or you may prefer the 20th century author George Orwell. "Civilized people sleep soundly because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf." Well, turns out Orwell never said that, but he wrote a few things that make it seem like he would have agreed with it. It's popular these days to imagine a future where war is no longer a necessary tool for states to defend themselves or accomplish their goals. I'd love to imagine a future like that, but our track record so far doesn't support it. It's true that killing and dying for your country is a lot less glorious today than it was 100 years ago, but every time we've imagined we've maybe figured out how to put an end to war, we've been flat-ass wrong. Let's face it. In a world where the Islamic State is still a thing, where nationalist and imperialist regimes in Russia and Iran and Saudi Arabia, and yes, even the United States sometimes, can be open about their ambitions, well, it makes sense to hope for a nice, quiet future, but stand ready for the world we live in now. And that world, much as we might wish otherwise, is a world where war exists, where by most objective measurements it's necessary, or at least necessary to be prepared for it. And if war exists, we need to try to understand it as best we can. And we can't understand something we're not willing to study. Okay, so what do we need to know? At the most basic level, we need to understand the immediate threat. Who's likely to come after us? Where and when are they going to hit us? How are they going to want to fight? And what kinds of weapons are they going to hit us with? Those are questions a military leader wants to answer, because knowing those answers makes it more likely that he can bring his warfighters home after the fight. But beyond the basic level, there are questions we can ask that might help us reach a deeper understanding. Who were they? What drove them to meet in that place on that day? What did they do particularly well or poorly? What was the political context? What could they have done differently, and how might that have changed the outcome? How did factors like terrain, weather, morale, and technology affect the battle? Questions like that help us understand a little more about how war and battle work. And when we understand that, it's a little easier to predict how it might work in the future. And those questions remain important, even if we're coming at the issue from an anti-war perspective. If what we want is to eliminate war, to prevent any young person's mother from ever having to receive a "we regret to inform you" message from the government they went off to fight for, doesn't it make sense to understand the factors that might get them sent off to fight in the first place? Until we do that, it's hard to figure out what we need to change to prevent next time. Personally, I think war is part of our existence, baked into who we are as humans. I think our instinct to kill each other is only a little less keen than our instinct to protect each other. And in a lot of scenarios, it's easier to reach. Hell, it's easy to make an argument that our protective instinct is a big part of what drives us to kill. How many of us can honestly say we would not kill a human being to protect someone we love? I can't. I would love to think I could find a different solution, but if it came right down to it, if the only way for me to protect a member of my family was to kill somebody who was threatening them, yeah, I'm pretty sure I would. And I bet you would too. Understanding that is the first step to understanding war. That's part of what we're doing with this channel. And more importantly, understanding war is a step toward understanding us. You don't really understand people until you understand how we act in extreme circumstances. Circumstances outside the realm of what we've defined as normal. And it doesn't get much more extreme than in the heat of battle, when the rules of so-called civilized life are stripped away and all that's left is the life and death struggle of one group of humans against another. That's where we learn who we really are. And even today, it's hard to predict how a person is going to react when they become aware for the first time that somebody's trying to kill them. Some of the most amazing human stories I've ever heard are stories of war and battle, and I'm going to share those with you wherever I find them. Stories like Horatius, the Roman officer who single-handedly held a bridge against an enemy advancing on Rome, giving the city time to prepare a defense. Stories like Boudica, the queen of a small British tribe who led a rebellion against the foremost power of her day and almost won. Stories like King Harold of England, who in 1066 repelled a Viking invasion only to turn his troops around to face a Norman invasion only a few days later. Stories like Marshal Louis Davout of France, who marched his men 78 miles in 46 hours to support Napoleon in his victory at Austerlitz. Stories like Lieutenant Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, who found his regiment outnumbered and out of ammunition at the extreme end of the Union line at Gettysburg, and instead of retreating, fixed bayonets and attacked. Stories like the Royal Air Force in the Battle of Britain in World War II, who somehow found the strength to keep flying against seemingly endless attacks by the German Luftwaffe. And those are just a few that I came up with off the top of my head. As we study history's wars together, we'll find plenty more, and I'll share them with you wherever I find them. Trust me, I won't be able to stop myself. But maybe you're just here for fun. Maybe you thought the idea of exploring every battle in history sounds cool. It is. Or maybe you're here wondering how the hell I think I'm going to get through everything. Well, I don't really think I will, or frankly that anybody could without a fair-sized team backing them up, but I'm going to give it my best shot. And we're going to have fun, because on my worst day, I find the study of war and combat and battle fascinating. And on my best day, I can nerd out as well as anybody you know. If that sounds interesting to you, I'd love it if you would join me on this journey. So until next time, I'm Scott, reminding you to piss when you can. Have a good one.